Hello and welcome to the second round of the World Series League's GT3 United States Series. And after last week's race in Daytona, we go to our first more normal track of the season. This is when we really start to find out who are the major players for the championship and which drivers are kind of just in the mid-pack, sort of fighting for all they're worth to try and break into the podium. That's where we're going to see, I think, the bulk of the best action for this season. We're here at Silverstone. It's the home of British auto racing and a staple in iRacing. I can't think of many iRacing championships that don't come here because this is just such a phenomenal race facility for that. I mean, this place has played host to many F1 Grand Prix, some World Endurance Championship races, and many more series and forms of racing. But John, this place is just spectacular to be at, especially in the sim, but real life, I can only imagine.
Yeah, this is a track with quite a history. I mean, this area was actually owned by the Royal Air Force, and helped during World War II, and then became a racing facility. And you can go down and look at guys who've won here. I mean, from Ascari to Jackie Stewart, through Villeneuve to Schumacher to Alonso and Hamilton, and I mean the list goes on and on and on. This is a big deal to be here, and this is a track too that's going to give us some exciting racing here tonight, because there's going to be some outstanding places to pass, but we'll get to check all that out as we're getting ready to roll here.
Yeah, that's right. Austin Belke, John Hine, Daniel Costello, pleased to be with you for tonight. You can see on your screen right now the starting grid for the Pro Series. Jacob Schneider lines up on the pole, followed by Harry Wills in second. Chase Wilson starts in third. Ethan Bass is going to roll off in the fourth position. James Pierce fifth. Kai Dizel in sixth. Taylor Lane seventh. Alex Murray in eighth. Jay Shellington in ninth, and Kyle Boss rounds out the top 10. Moving on to the Pro-Am category, Derek Miller is going to start on pole for that series. Christopher Johnson is going to line up in second. Mark Scott third. Nick Stein fourth. Shreyas Venkataju in fifth. Rich Kelly in sixth. Brandon Melling in seventh. Kyle Smith eighth. Justin Risteau lining up at ninth. Blake Scott rounding out the top 10. In the AM category, Aaron Beaver, Matthew Plaisance, Eric Papineau, Rick Swan, John Casey, Greg Brockway going to round out the six-car field. Very, very pressed for time here today. You can see the leaders already about to go through the final corner on the course. Up to the start-finish line here. Jacob Schneider, again, can take the green flag whenever he chooses so within the restart zone. They talk about that in the drivers' meeting. He waited for a long time to Jacob, but once finally we are on the loud pedals here and green flag racing at Silverstone for the World Series League's GT3 US Series. Schneider with a commanding lead, but Harry Wills is absolutely underneath his rear wing, John.
Yeah, absolutely. Good start. Oh, we got one that's... Whoa!
Oh, hard lick. Chase Wilson bumper tag there. Can't quite tell who got into the back of him, but just as soon as that action gets finished out there as they go through the couple first corners, oh, more contact there. A little bit of door banging action between the first two drivers, Derek Miller, Christopher Johnson. Well, that's one car hard off into the sand trap there. Hard contact into the inside wall. We'll have to see if we find out who that is. You can see that one car top right of your screen, just barely there. Out of frame now, hard contact for them. Going back now to the AM category, Matthew Plaisance already taken the green flag in the AM field. Now we need the rest of the field there, the first couple corners. Kyle Boss was the car that ended up making that rear end impact to Chase Wilson. We're getting word here from Daniel.
Yeah, right off the bat, we have some excitement here. And, last week, of course, we were at Daytona, which is a completely different beast. You got high banks and everything else. Here, you've got to rely a little bit more on your setup. You got a couple off camber, mostly flat. How you brake and whatnot, and how you approach these corners and how you get off of them are going to be way more important than what you saw there at Daytona. A lot more momentum involved over there, but here these guys got to get these tires up to temp, and that's probably what caused a couple of those problems right there on the start.
Yeah, certainly you can see Harry Wills continues to hound Jacob Schneider there for this first position in the pro category. Big start for them. There's a decent size gap. They're back to Ethan Bass, third position in this pro category as they come off the final turn on the course to now complete their first lap. Running on board here with Jacob Schneider, one of the drivers carrying our onboard cam there. The drivers do have the option to join a Zoom call to kind of let us into their cockpit as it were.
And you know, you can tell the look of intensity on his face. These guys get after it here, and man, you know, I know it's sim racing, but trust me, all the emotion and everything else, and it's all just as intense.
Oh, 3 wide there as they go through the first couple corners here on the racetrack. Abbey Farm curve right here. Continue to be 2 wide. Lots of passing action going on here in the Pro-Am category. Just as we saw last week, definitely I think this is the hottest category in terms of the most competition between the drivers. You got a bunch of guys sort of all lumped in to this Pro-Am category, and I don't think I can fault the organizer of the series for doing that, because look at all these guys. I mean, after, you know, basically a lap and a half to have this much separation, pretty phenomenal job.
Yeah, there's still nose to tail for the most part through here, and you know that brings a lot more. Well, I use the word intensity. I mean, one little mistake here can really cost you early on here. So, you know, early here though, they got a chance here to feel the cars out, and they've got plenty of time yet to try to figure it out and go settle this thing.
And speaking of little mistakes, looking at Harry Wills here, he has lost Jacob Schneider by about 2 seconds or so. So looks like Harry might have made no, it's actually, yeah. So Schneider continues to stay out there. Harry Wills, though, falling quite considerably through the field outside of the top 6, in fact. The next driver ahead of him is Jeremy Littleton. So it looks like for right now, Harry Wills has gone from 2nd to 11th. All in one lap as we continue to keep our eyes locked on this Pro-Am battle. You can see the cars starting to serpentine down this back straightaway, and what are they doing there? I mean, they can't be, I wouldn't assume they're warming their tires at this point anymore, John. It's got to just be blocking the draft.
Yeah, trying to break the draft, and how you exit that other corner, you want the car to wash out, and you bring it back over, because, you know, to set yourself up for the next quarter. So maybe a little bit of a combination of both. You know, it's never too early to start playing head games, you know.
Certainly, we've got a couple of replays here for you. We're just going to go through them. Daniel, again, hooking us up with all these fantastic angles. Nothing gets past him. He's got the eagle eyes between John and myself. This is a replay here of the incident we saw into turn 1, and oh man, that was a lot bigger of a shunt to Chase Wilson than I thought. I thought that was just a car locking up, but that was somebody going through the grass there. You can see a lot of damage on that right rear.
Yeah, and right there, he locked that car down because he was going to go back on the racing surface and cause a much bigger problem. What a nice heads-up thing for him to do there.
Let's have a look here at Kyle Boss. See what happened to him here. Does it move up the inside? Oh, just that's got all the look to me, John, of some sort of a mechanical failure on his part.
Yeah.
Maybe hardware.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right there.
Taking another look here at Mark Scott as the drivers head out of Woodcock down to Copse. It's that harsh right-hander there, the exact same spot that we saw Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen get into it. I believe last year, maybe 2021. Yeah, 2021, I believe. The two made contact, sending Verstappen into the barrier. Now through Maggots and Beckett's, a phenomenal complex of corners here, John. Probably one of my favorite all time in iRacing, because the corners, they really just feed into one another.
Yeah, and they do flow real nice here, and this is a good spot for you to get a run on somebody too coming out of them, because you get on this long stretch here, and yeah, if you can get out of those really well and have a bit of a run, you're going to be really set up for a nice chance to pass there.
Ethan Bass here all over the rear end of Kai Dalziel. You can see Jacob Schneider is absolutely checked out over the front of these 3 cars. He's got about a 4.3 second gap back into the Pro-Am category. It looks like Kyle Smith trying to see if he can attack Rich Calais there. Calais not quite going to let him have a look down the inside. I think for right now, Smith's just a tick faster.
Yeah, and you mentioned this corner they're going through right now, you know, that battle between Max and Lewis there, but last season, a bit of a big shunt that went there, and that I believe it was Zhu that went through. Yeah, Guan Yu that went through there, and man, that was one of the scarier things, because those folks that were in those stands, the only thing between them and an F1 car was that fence there.
Yeah, it's one of those things you don't often think about as a car going airborne and coming right at you, especially not in that portion of the course, turn 1, lap 1. But sure enough, anything can and will happen. Taking another look here, that's the gap between the pro category, the leader Jacob Schneider, and the second, third, and fourth place cars. This is a look at what happened to Harry Wills. I made the comment that he was on the rear end of Jacob Schneider, and then all of a sudden found himself outside of the top 10. Goes for a little bit of a lazy spin there, and just goes ahead and continues to spin that rear axle to get that car pointed the right way around. And now he's back in the thick of things.
Yeah, don't count him out. An outstanding driver there, and if anybody can make up any time, it's going to be him.
Certainly, and I believe, I can't quite recall correctly, but I believe the way it used to be at least was between the two rounds they would invert the field, Daniel. Is that still what they do? Yes, the top 50% from all three of these fields in and of itself will be inverted. So I wouldn't say Harry's out of it yet. He's got a couple places to gain. He's in 11th spot right now out of 12, so he's going to have to at least crack a top 6 if he wants any hope of catching that invert. And John, you can talk about this especially from the dirt side a lot of times too. They will have an invert, especially some of that short track racing style of an invert, and it really does a great job to kind of heat things up. And that's especially what's going to happen with this next 50-minute race coming on later today. It's not just the 25 minutes in race number 1 and we're done for the evening.
Yeah, and having an invert really gives guys opportunities to show their skill. I mean, you know, you start out front on this one, you can kind of drive away and everything else, but you get inverted, all of a sudden all of your racecraft comes into play. You gotta, you know, show your braking skills, your passing skills, you know, what level of patience do you have. All that kind of stuff will come into play there, and it's quite the challenge for these guys once they do get them inverted.
Looking at Taylor Lane there, one of the other drivers, again carrying our onboard camera, so kind of taking us into his real-life cockpit as he continues to chase these two cars ahead of him. Kai Dalzell, Ethan Bass. Taylor finds himself in that 4th position in that kind of turquoise-colored BMW just behind him. Again, you can see Jacob Schneider up the road. These guys have been doing a good job to stick together and start to apply the pressure on Jacob, because his lead has already fallen from that 4.3 second margin we talked about earlier down to just shy of 4 seconds.
Yeah, and when you start to see that, that's the greatest feeling for a driver. When you can, we got one off, a couple off here.
Well, Christopher Johnson facing the wrong direction there. He was just looking to the inside of another BMW driver, Andrew Hewson. The too wide into Maggots and Beckett's, and John, that's not really an area you want to go too wide into. And right there, you know, kind of case in point for both those drivers. It looked like Hewson lagged out there and then sort of made some netcode contact with Johnson. And yeah, Andrew Hewson was out for a good couple seconds there.
Yeah, and for those of you watching, you know, this is virtual racing, so it's all online, which is really remarkable if you think about it. These drivers are from all over. We got people in here that race in real time with people not only from the UK, but over here in the States, up in Canada. I think we even got maybe an Australian or two in the field here. So it really is remarkable what happens here. And sometimes anybody who knows, who's ever tried to, you know, stream a movie or something, they get the little buffering signal. That can happen here in iRacing too from time to time, and that's when we say, oh, they kind of lagged out or whatever. And it happens. You know, to iRacing's credit, it doesn't happen too often, but it does happen.
Yeah, I mean, in internet gaming, in one form or another, it might not even be iRacing's fault. Sometimes, you know, you have a parent that decides to turn on the microwave, and if you're running over Wi-Fi, you know, that 2.4 gigahertz that you'll have on a more basic Wi-Fi router setup is the same thing that your microwave runs at, so you might be having that some of that going on. Sometimes, too, it's all just down to ISP. You know, you got some places in the world that don't have the best, strongest connection. You continue to look at this battle between Ethan Bass and Taylor Lane. Taylor just took that spot away from Ethan.
Yeah, and just to kind of geek out on the technology, I mean, our director here, he's in South Africa. You're in Michigan here in the States. I'm in St. Louis, but yet we're all pulled together watching the same thing and doing this all in real time. It's quite an accomplishment, I think, that we're getting to do this, and it's pretty cool. And I always take a moment and think about that from time to time. That man, we've come a long way.
Yeah, we certainly have. And you know, you talk about people from all over the world racing with each other in iRacing. It's also formed a lot of friendships as well through the internet that we all share a common love of motorsports, racing, sim racing especially. And these guys in this league, they get out of the cars. It's just like in real life. You have friends. These guys all talk to each other before, after, and even during the race, especially when you have this big gap between this 25-minute sprint and the 50 minutes sort of endurance or so. You'll find them all down in the Discord hanging out, talking with each other. You can see riding on board here with Mark Scott. He's in the second position, trying to chase down Shreyas. Shreyas 3 seconds up the road, though. It's going to be a tall order, basically second half of this race, John, to eat up in that 3-second gap.
Yeah, and you know me, I love these shots where you have the racing helmet in the background. You know, he's got gloves. I've got my gloves. You know, getting into it here, and he's having a heck of a run here. Running currently second there in the Pro-Am division. Still got, we're just a little over halfway through this 25-minute race here. So, you know, if he's got anything, he's going to have to start showing his cards to try to track that leader down.
Yeah, he certainly is. This, just as we've been talking about, though, he's already gained about that gap down to 2.6 seconds. So he's almost gained an entire half a second there up the road. So he's doing a pretty darn good job of at least trying to eat into that lead. And I don't know, John, if it caught your eye, but I was certainly kind of taken off guard by the amount of light coming in through his window, and I was like, surely he can't be, you know, it's kind of narrows it down, a Californian driver. So even though it might be dark again, in one part of the world, it's practically the middle of the day in some other parts.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, and the thing for him closing in, and I was going to start to say this earlier, is as a driver, there's two things happening. It's the greatest feeling in the world when you can see that you're reeling that guy in. But it can also be a double-edged sword, because drivers, I think by nature, tend to get greedy from time to time and maybe try to push it a little bit too far, all in the quest to catch that guy in front of you. So you've got to be really disciplined when you see yourself, you know, closing in on somebody.
Boy, look at the amount of opposite lock and just wheel that James Pierce is having to put into this race car. This is the driver that, of course, did very well in our media day, so it kind of taken me off guard, at least, to see him really having to chase this car around. He's got his hands full right now. I don't feel like this setup is really doing him any favors. You can see just how much wheel he's having to put into the car, counter steering into and off of the corners. This car definitely not sort of up to par with what he'd want so far.
Well, these cars now, we've mentioned this the last couple of broadcasts and whatnot. They've got a brand new tire, you know, model on them with a, well, not model, but, you know, there's now a significant amount of more tire wear than what they did, you know, where they had them last season. So, you know, these tires, if they get angry, that's what you're going to see. Sawing all over the wheel, trying to keep that car planted on the track. Just like their real world counterparts, the car is not going to want to grip up if you abuse those tires.
Looking here, Braden Melling trying to chase down Miller just up the road. Risso, excuse me, trying to chase him down. No, I was right. That's
in the Ford GT, should we add?
Yeah, again, not very often you see this, and we're going to probably continue to see him in this car all season long, where it's going to continue to be on our mind, so we'll be talking about it. But yeah, it's not very often you see drivers out there in the Ford GT. Braden Melling, one of those drivers. Again, he's got Miller just up the road in front of him. Derek doing a pretty darn good job. Kind of the cork in the bottle, proverbially speaking right now. He's got Risto and then Blake Scott just behind him. So, but again, you know, sometimes the fastest driver doesn't always win the race, and sometimes it can be very hard to pass on this track, especially with how these cars handle the speed of the straightaways and also the long sweeping corners around this track as well.
Yeah, and the braking, and I mean, this track really pushes about all parts of, you know, your repertoire here. You know, like you touched on, high speed. You know, you can build that into the car by trimming it out, but if you trim the car out, which means maybe taking a little bit of downforce so it cuts through the air to go faster, to have that high-end speed, you're going to give a lot up over in the corners, and, you know, all of a sudden that car is not going to cut, you know, like you want it to, you know, going into the corner or in the center of the corner. So there is definitely a trade-off here. How fast do you want to go? How much do you want to give up? And trust me, these guys are making notes, and I promise you, when they come back, I bet you're going to see a handful of them probably make some significant changes to their ride.
Yeah, great opportunity is that little bit of a break between this race and the next one. Of course, the next one 50 minutes, so a tick longer, but gives these drivers a great opportunity to sort of wrench on their machines, kind of like a pit stop, as it were, and maybe just a reset overall. Riding on board again with Taylor Lane and that turquoise blue BMW just in behind Kai Dalzell. Talking about corks in the bottle. Kind of a cork in the bottle right here for Ethan and Ryan. Two drivers continue to hound him there for that second position. Jacob Schneider, though, continues to check out and run away from these drivers.
Yeah, and this is where you got to be disciplined again. You know you're maybe just a little faster than the guy in front of you, but if you push it and all of a sudden you put yourself in a bad spot, either overdriving a corner or trying to get too much through the center, you'll lose ground really quick. The car, by overdriving, then you got to slow the car down a little bit, and then you got to deal with tire degradation too if you're really pushing too hard too early.
See these drivers as they go through the first couple corners on the lap. Right now they find themselves going into a Village and then the Loop, and now down the Wellington Straight into Brooklands. It always amazes me how many different names you'll have for corners, especially on an older historic racetrack like Silverstone, especially. Pretty much every corner on the track layout, I think every corner actually has a name to it. Even the straightaways have names even.
So have you already started trying to memorize all the corners at the ring?
Maybe the big name ones, like the Schumacher S's. I don't think I'll be able to get all 1,000 turns there memorized. That'd be something though.
I would be impressed. Probably anybody watching too would be, but we got a ways to go before that race, and that's one I love that place. I really, really do. But we're here at Silverstone though, and very historic, and I still like coming here. I know we're not actually at the track, but still, driving around here, anytime I've been around the track here, you can just sense the history as you go around here.
You can, and plus it's just a really fun track too. You'll see a lot of times some tracks that are older or historic aren't as fun to race on, but this is one of those tracks where it's really stood the test of time, even with the repaved, yes, but sort of a reconfiguration that the track went through, and I really feel like it improved. And I'm sure there's some people, that really enjoyed the old one, and they're going to shake their fist at this new layout. But I can't fault it. It certainly made the racing a lot more interesting from what I've seen. But you'll have, again, there's two sides to every story.
Yeah, we got a really good battle here in the pro category, and the time is starting to wind down here. We're under 5 minutes.
Yeah, James Pierce kind of tucked right up behind there, Jeremy Littleton. Jeremy's done a great job to climb further up through the field. He's got himself locked into the 6th position. And I want to touch on this again just to remind you folks at home the importance of finishing in 6th versus a 7th spot. If you finish in 6th, you're going to start the next race on pole. If you finish 7th, you're going to start the next race exactly right there in 7th, because we only invert the top half of each of these fields. For this pro category, it is 12 cars deep, so only the top 6 cars will get inverted. You can see James Pierce continues to see if he can get around Jeremy Littleton. That's the Ferrari, and then the Lamborghini, and then there's, I believe, a BMW. Yes, sir, BMW at the very tail end of this field. Boy, talk about James Pierce. He certainly got this car a lot more under control from the looks of it in these last couple laps.
Yeah, he's not really in a real technical part of the track, and you can cool your tires off there. So, I just the way that he was kind of sliding around, and looked like he had got the tires just a little bit angry at him, and I do think I think you're right. I think he does look a little bit more stable as he comes through here, but he is definitely pushing as time is running down for him.
Yeah, and you can't fault him either. I'll tell you what, though, Jeremy Littleton certainly looks a lot more on edge compared to what we were seeing earlier. I feel like James is still, I feel like he's faster, but again, it's so hard to pass at a track like Silverstone. All these long straightaways really kind of just lull you into a false sense of, I'm going to say, overspeed for the car ahead of you, because, you know, a lot of these corners, you want to kind of enter them very shallow, and it gives that chasing car a lot of opportunity to try the outside, and it's extremely hard. I would say near impossible to pass somebody on the outside in a majority of the corners on this track.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's where getting the runs, like I talked about earlier, you know, how you exit corners and stuff like that, you've really got to time that stuff just right to get the runs that you need so you can outbrake somebody at the end of those straightaways and getting into those other corners.
And I say that there is a lot of overtaking opportunities in F1 around the outside. You just saw there James Pierce go to the inside. He went around the outside there of Jeremy Littleton, and then that gave him the inside into the next corner. You can see just how much time there Jeremy has lost to the two cars ahead of him now as James Pierce. I believe Chris Long as well have gotten around him. Further up through the field there, you can see we've got Ethan Bass.
Yeah, when you have that much more pace than somebody, though, going to the outside is an option, but it usually doesn't work out that way. And I'll even go as far as saying, I'll bet you if this was early on in the race, I don't think he could have probably pulled that pass off.
Yeah, definitely not. It's something you have to do, or you're given the opportunity to do, I should say, only deeper into the race when the tires have sort of worn off. They've had less of that good on them, sort of more of the lead has been put back into the car from those. But Jeremy's still going to stay resolute, and obviously every point, every spot on the racetrack is worth a couple points here. So trying to see if he can hunt down Chris Long back there for the spot again. In the M category, the closest battle. Oh, John Casey, a little bit of contact there with Swan. Let's spin him around.
Boy, we're getting down to it, too.
There for that contact. Go ahead, John. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, that's going to cost him. I mean, there's not enough time to make that kind of time back up with the white flags out.
Yeah, Jacob Schneider has just come across the start-finish line here to take the white flag for the overall race lead. So again, the 25 minutes will be up by the time he completes his next lap. So this should be the last time a lot of these cars go through these corners under green flag conditions. You can still see Ethan Bass all over the rear end of Taylor Lane. Gosh, John, if I had another camera angle, you might be able to prove or disprove it, but I feel like there is some bump drafting in that corner.
I think there was some rub in there a little bit, and I don't know if it's a case where Ethan got in a little bit better than what he thought and Lane didn't, or what the thing is, but they both made it work. They kept the car straight here, and they're going to come across the line. Look at it. Ethan is trying everything. He had that car hung out trying to get around him.
Yeah, doing everything in the book he can possible to see if he can't get around Taylor Lane there. He's only got about another half a lap to do it, so he's going to have to continue to try all the tricks up his sleeve to see if any of them can work.
Yeah, he's definitely pushing right now, and you can see now though he started to lose ground. And I had talked about that a little earlier, but when you're faster than somebody, you got to stay disciplined, because if you try to push it too far, you lose ground real easy. You eat up your tires, and you're going to lose that fight for at least a little while.
Looks like Kerry Wills is going to have to settle here for the 10th position best. I feel like he has the opportunity to get for right now is 9th from Jay Shallington. Just now, though, we've got our overall leader here, Jacob Schneider. He's going to come through club section here up onto the Hamilton Straight and take the checkered flag in this 25-minute sprint race here to start off the night. So Jacob Schneider going to grab the checkered flag in his Audi. Coming off the last turn as well, Kai Dalzell, and it looks like Taylor Lane's going to hold on to that final spot on the podium over Ethan Bass. Looks like Jeremy Littleton's going to have to settle for the 8th position. So close was he to getting that 6th position and that invert to put him on pole for the next race. Harry Wills slideways across the corner. Barely able to hold off there. The car behind. Shreyas Ventugadraju going to come across the start-finish line to take first place there in the Pro-Am category. Derek Miller holding off against Scott. Melling, Aaron Beaver here coming through the last couple corners.
Yeah, he's got a nice substantial lead over Matthew Plaisance here, so he's going to be able to just get it through these corners without a whole lot of difficulty, it looks like, and he's got to take the checkered here in the AM division.
Yeah, so both the top two drivers last week going to take the top two spots here in the M division. Of course, Matthew Plaisance won overall while we're in Daytona, so he's going to pull his Ferrari over to the side of the racetrack as we see Eric Papineau. He's going to come through the last couple corners here. He's only got club to go through left, and then he'll cross the start-finish line for hopefully for his sake. Put that car on the podium. You still see a little bit of a battle between Rick Swan and John Casey in behind. Looks like John was nice enough to give Rick that position back. You'll see a lot of that here, especially in the World Series leagues. Lots of camaraderie and sportsmanship between all these drivers. We're going to let iRacing timing and scoring do its thing here for a couple seconds, but we should have the overall finishing results for you here in just a little bit. All right, and we can go on to the overall results here. So in the Pro Division, Jacob Schneider takes the checkered flag over Kai Dalzell. Taylor Lane rounds out the podium. Ethan Bass fourth. Ryan Kaprowski will finish in the fifth position. James Pierce in sixth. Chris Long seventh. Jeremy Littleton eighth. Harry Wills from second position drops down to the ninth spot, followed by Jay Shallington, who rounds out the top 10. Alex Murray's going to come home in 11th, followed by Dean Timms in 12th. Kyle Boss 13th. Chase Wilson in 14th. Moving on to the Pro-Am division, Shreyas Vendakaraju gained 6 spots, up from 19th position overall on the grid to 13th overall. He'll win the race, take the checkered flag for his Pro-Am cars. Rich Calais in second. Kyle Smith rounds out the podium for the Pro-Am class. Derek Miller fourth. Mark Scott in fifth. Braden Melling sixth. Blake Scott seventh. Christopher Johnson in eighth. Andrew Hewson, Mark Sigelkow round out the top 10 with Justin Risteau and Nick Stein rounding out the 12-car field. And finally, last but not least, in the AM category, Aaron Beaver takes a checkered flag over Matthew Plaisance, and straight up inversion of the finishing results from last time out in Daytona. Eric Papineau finishes the race on the podium with Rick Swan and John Casey rounding out the top 10. And Taylor and Charlie on the field for right now, Greg Brockway. With that, we can go into the points championship standings for right now before we go on our little bit of an intermission between the two race series here. See Alex Murray atop the point standings with 95. He's got a cool 6-point lead there over Chase Wilson. Harry Wills rounds out the podium. Ethan Bass, Kai Dalzell round out the top 5. This is for the pro categories. Taking a look now at the Pro-Am category. And again, just to, thank you, Daniel. This is before the races today. These are only after the Daytona race at 75-minute endurance one. Blake Scott, Shreyas Vendakaraju in second, Andrew Hewson third, Christopher Johnson fourth, Rich Calais in fifth. Eric Kulaga, sixth drawn run for him. He's not here tonight, though, so he might take a little bit of a tumble down the championship standings. Good to see Steven Martinez and Michael Kulaga in there as well. Brandon Melling should have a pretty good uptick between this race and the next one. If we take now a look at the AM championship standings. And again, and not too much of a surprise here. Matthew Plaisance wins the race last week. Aaron Beaver in second. Eli Sasick not here this week, but was last week. Greg Brockway, Rick Swan, John Casey round out the top 6 cars. And with that, we're going to take a quick break while we switch the sessions over and get ready for the 15-minute race. We'll be still here at Silverstone. Hopefully you folks at home stay here as well. We'll be right back.
You think you can do anything, but you can't. You tell me about your love, it's a bad trend. You try to kiss me, I was against. I don't like when you hold me by the waist. You can try me. My heart is cold, my feelings flew. When my dreams come true, I'll be not with you, oh boy. You'd better find yourself another toy. You can try me on, it doesn't matter. You can try me on, but it's okay. Baby, there's no feeling you remember. The love is gone. You can try me on, it doesn't matter. You can try me on, but it's okay. Baby, there's no feeling you remember. The love is gone for me. You can try me.
Welcome back, Austin Belkey, John Hine with you in the booth. Daniel Costello behind the scenes in the production trailer, bringing us again all the fantastic camera angles that he continues to do so with. And John, I can't really think of more words to sum up that previous race than entertaining and just phenomenal. I mean, that was a really good battle that we had there. And of course, I can't say I didn't expect that. We're at Silverstone, for crying out loud. Lots of good, overtaking opportunities, but it's really hard to complete the passes when you do make them.
Yeah, and that was just a warm up. I mean, those guys were just basically clearing their throats here, and they're getting ready to go full song here for a much longer race. So it's going to give them an opportunity to make some changes. Maybe they didn't like the tire wear that they saw, or maybe their cars were getting down the straightaways maybe a little bit slower than what they thought. So, and maybe they think now they can take a little bit of a downforce out of the car to make them a little slicker, or it could be the opposite, where they felt like they were giving too much up in the corners. So maybe they're going to build a little downforce back into the car. But there is a lot of different ways that they can go, and plus they're going to get some more laps here as we see them out on track. We're looking in there at Mark Scott here behind the wheel of his Porsche, and man, this is good stuff here, and these guys, I really can't wait to see what they're going to do here in this next 50 minutes.
Yeah, certainly. Hopefully, again, we're not sort of breaking tradition there, bringing Jacob Schneider up into the booth. Jacob, we'll be honest, this is probably the first time we've ever had guys hop into the waiting to interview room in between the races. Usually we just go through the final order for the last race and then just go right to break. But, with the dominant fashion you run the last race with, figure we'd take an opportunity to sort of kill time talk with you. You got a copy, buddy?
Yeah,
Well, Jacobs, in the last race, you started off on pole and you ran away with it. But now, of course, with the 50% invert through the field, you're going to be lining up in the 6th position. What are sort of the challenges that come with lining up back there? I'm going to say right in the thick of things, really.
Yeah, I think that's right where my teammates started for the sprint race, and they didn't make it through the first couple corners. So, I guess just give everyone extra space, survive the first lap, and just pick them off one at a time after that, I hope.
Yeah, there was a lot of calamity in the first couple corners there, so I'm glad you kind of touched on a little bit what your game plan is going to be. I'd also like to pick your brain here on the game plan for the pit stop later in the race. You guys seeing, it looked like there was a decent amount of tire wear, at least in the 25-minute race. You're going to now be going 2 times that distance here in the 50-minute one. When you come down pit road, are there any sort of ideas to take tires, maybe only the left sides, or maybe just going to gas and go?
I was able to save tires pretty well out front, but I got an early lead there and just kind of maintained, so I don't think that's going to be the case this time around. So, I don't know. I'm just going to have to watch lap times and see how much drop-off I get.
Certainly. Well, Jacob, thank you so much for your time. John, you got any more questions for Jacob?
I do. I got a couple here, just real quick. Jacob, you were out front, so you're able to just really run at your own pace and take your own lines here. Without having the benefit of, practicing passing and all that in there, do you anticipate, do you already know where your strengths are going to be to where you can make passes, or is there a part of the track that was giving you a little bit of trouble that you might even struggle at here at trying to get through the field?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. I know that.
Sorry to bring it up.
The Audi's not super great in a straight line, so I think I'm gonna have to beat someone under braking if it comes down to it. The Audi also gets great fuel mileage, so maybe I can just make it happen in the pits.
Well, outstanding. I wish you the best of luck here, and we'll be watching you.
All right, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for your time. That was Jacob Schneider. Won the overall race again in the pro class. We're going to go ahead and send him back down to the Prodigy Esports. That's the channel right there, Jacob?
Yes.
All right, go ahead and send him back down there, get him on his way. And really glad we actually got the opportunity to go ahead and take a moment to talk with him as we see Kyle Smith with his onboard. You can see him there in the lower corner, and then his BMW race car in the upper left. Yeah,
I hated to realize I made him put more on his mind here starting that race, because I mean, yeah, I think he's right worrying about the start of the race a little bit, because you know we saw a lot of contact, we saw definitely some offs there that first lap, and now he's got to think about that. So, yeah, oops, sorry, that's all I can say.
No, I mean, it's a lot of good questions too, and it's one thing that you don't really have the opportunity to practice when you start on pole and you can just run away. Because again, to start out that last session, the drivers do have a qualifying session they go into, and then they set the grid like that. So, you know, if you start up front and you just drive away and win the race, there's not a whole lot of opportunities to find out how your car behaves in that dirty air. Dirty air does a lot in this racetrack through maggots and beckets, especially any more of these high speed corners. Really going to be a true tire killer as the race continues to go on, especially with this now double sprint length 50 minutes, John.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I forgot to ask him is just how much experience he has here at this track, because if you've got a lot of laps on a track, we talked about this last week at Daytona where you and I have countless laps on there. You know, you put us on track with somebody that maybe has half the experience we do. We can use that experience to our advantage in a lot of different ways through the course of the race. So I failed there, maybe not to ask that question, but I'd be interested to know it though.
Oh, all good, John. Looks like I failed as well. It's not 50% of the cars that's raced. It might be 50% of the overall field if everyone were to show up. So instead of that top 6 invert for at least the pro category, it was a top 10 invert. So Jay Shellington lines up on the pole. He's got Harry Wills starting to his outside in second. Jamie Littleton lines up in third place, followed by Chris Long in fourth. James Pierce is going to roll off to round out the top 5, followed by Ryan Kaprowski in the 6th position. Ethan Bass is going to roll off in 7th, followed by Taylor Lane in 8th, and then the first 2 cars to cross the start-finish line in the last race in opposite order, Kai Dazel and Jacob Schneider. Alex Murray and Dean Timms round out the 12th car field. In the Pro-Am category, it's going to be Mark Sigelkow lining up on pole. He's going to have Andrew Hewson to his outside in second. Christopher Johnson's going to line up in third, followed by Blake Scott in fourth. Braden Melling's going to line up in fifth, followed by Mark Scott in sixth. Kyle Smith seventh. Rich Calais eighth. Shreyas Vendigaraju in ninth, and Justin Rizzo in 10th. Moving on to the AM category. In the first position, it's the driver to last cross the start-finish line, Greg Brockway, followed by John Casey in second, Rick Swan third, Eric Papineau in fourth, Matthew Plaisance in fifth, and the winner of the last amateur race there at Silverstone earlier today, Aaron Beaver. We'll now go ahead and get the camera focused here on the overall leader of the race, pole sitter, if you will, in the pro category, Jay Shellington, as he comes off the final corner before we're going to go ahead and take the green flag here in this race. Again, he can start the race whenever he wants to on the front stretch. Green flag flies. He goes and puts his foot on the loud pedal. First couple corners down here, he's going to get himself a pretty good jump in front of the rest of the field here.
Yeah, and I bet you a lot of those guys are giving each other a little more room and being a little more patient coming through there too.
And you can still see, 2 and 3 wide, but right now, not a whole lot of contact between any of these drivers, and I think they've all kind of gotten that wake-up call. In the Pro-Am category, Mark Sigelkow leads the field through the first couple of corners. Andrew Hewson hot on his heels, as is Blake Scott, one driver just now coming out of the pits. That might be Harry Wills. I couldn't help but notice he did not take the initial start as the AM category rockets away from the start-finish line. Greg Brockway, a ginormous lead there of a John Casey, a little bit slow there through the corner. Eric Papineau, Rick Swan, Matthew Plaisance continue to follow through. One car, though, very slow on the side of the road. That's Greg Brockway. It looks like he was pulling over there to let the field through. Maybe he's having a little bit of a hardware error there, John. But for the lead, we're side by side as the cars now go through the first couple corners here to start the second half of the lap.
Yeah, that kind of did look like a hardware issue back there. He just took a turn right off the track, actually. It wasn't like he was trying to get off the racing line. He went off the track intentionally there. So, tough break. Hope he gets it worked out. And we're going to focus back up here at the front of the field.
Yeah, battle in the pro category. They went side by side into comps, did Jay Shellington and I believe that Chris Long. So, Jeremy Littleton up there in the mix as well, John.
Yeah, and the cars are feeling as good as what they're going to feel right now for these guys. So, if they have an opportunity to pass or they're a little bit quicker than somebody, especially those guys towards the back of that invert, You're going to want to try to make quick work to get through these guys.
Oh, one car sliding around.
Whoa.
There goes Chris Long. He's going to get overtaken by a good couple of cars. Ryan Kaprowski falling down the order as well, just a little bit.
Well, lap one.
All the calamity.
Driver.
Yeah, and all that calamity. Oh, John Casey going a little bit wide there. I believe that's down the hanger straight. Taylor Lane going to come away with the overall race lead, the pro category.
Yeah, and Taylor now just needs to look out the front windshield, hit your marks, get into every corner correctly, and, make sure you're hitting the brakes when you need to, getting on the gas. That'll keep those guys at bay. If you can do all those things, he'll be very, very difficult to pass.
Yeah, certainly hitting your marks is worth a lot more than just a couple tenths over the course of a lap, and that was Jeremy Littleton that went for a spin. Hopefully we can see a replay of that in just a little bit. And got his car well out of the way, and then back on the love pedal, currently running around into 12th position, so he's only got 2 more spots. You're going to look at here a replay of Ethan Bass. Those drivers we would like to always talk about. John Annette Ford GT, widely considered one of the slower cars. Looks like he just goes for a bit of a line
and it's
there.
tough to tell that if he had help or not. I kind of think maybe because
I'm inclined to agree.
Bryce, where he looped that around, and at the pace he looped that around, that sure had the look of maybe just a little bit of contact there helped him go around.
Yeah, and not just folks at home, the speed with which the cars are going through that corner, the speed with which the car whipped its rear end around.
Yes.
I feel like you might have had a little bit of help there, because it's not too often you see a car spin around that quickly in left field. Looks like, okay, so Daniel Costello, he glide director there. He made contact with the car in front, and then that kind of helped the car spin out. John, whenever you do that, certainly that front axle staying more so in the same place of that contact, that rear end gets a little bit loose and is forced to just basically whip itself right around.
That and the fact that he was probably jumping on the brakes to not completely run over the guy in front of him. When you know this, when you get on the brakes really hard and you have that wheel turned, that's a car that's going to be really difficult to hang on to.
Yeah, not only just with the brake balance of these cars, of course, when you're on the brakes at that point in the corner, you've got that much wheel into it, all the weight is going to shift forward and really just allow that rear axle to come up off the ground. Maybe not necessarily completely, but a lot less grip on it. Up towards the front of the field, Taylor Lane continues to get hounded by Chris Long there. I don't know if they made contact before they went into left field, but it certainly seemed extremely close. You're going to see the cars rocketing towards cops at the moment.
Yeah, look who's got in their way.
Gonna get a replay here in a second. This is Mark Sigelkow. Check out what happens here, the cause for this replay. Oh, contact there. Gonna send Mark to the inside in his Porsche. And it's an extremely fast-paced part of the track. Out of all the places before you get looped around and lose a ton of time, that's probably one of the places you're gonna lose the most.
It is, and tough break for him. But going back up here to the front here, back to Chris Long here. Third place though, Pierce has already moved his way back up here onto the podium, so he didn't waste any time here. It took him about 5 minutes to get back up here and be up front. So he's got a long way to go, and only a couple cars now to regain the lead and control of this race.
I tell you what, now that we've seen everything kind of shake out here, we're going to come across the start-finish line to complete lap 3. You get a good idea of where everybody is running now in terms of pace. There's still a lot more of the race left, a lot more opportunities for these guys who just completely burn off their tires. But Taylor Lane up 7 spots. He started the race in the 8th position, right now running in the 1st place. Jacob Schneider has already gained 4 spots. So John, even though he's maybe a little bit worried about all the calamity that took place in the sprint round of the 25-minute race that went on before this one, looks like he started the race off pretty well for this 50-minute affair. Big slide though, right there for Chris Long. We had a retiree. Who is that, Daniel? Jeremy Littleton took a tow. So after that spin, he was forced to endure there. And right about the club area, he's forced to just considered to park his car. Looking here at Jacob Schneider, racing side by side. He's got the likes of Murray on one side, Heidelzell further up the road. So that's the next car. Once he makes this pass, he's going to set his sights on. So move Jacob Schneider now into the top 5 with this Audi. And again, this is the car for you folks at home. Might be just joining us. Maybe your memory isn't all that great. He was the car that won in the 25-minute sprint race earlier. Look at how tucked up underneath his rear wing there was Ryan Kaprowski, trying to look for all that downforce possible. This is not a spot on the racetrack you want to necessarily run, certainly not in any downforce-driven car right behind somebody's rear diffuser.
Well, you can do that as long as your wheel is straight, but as soon as you have to brake or turn, you want air on your nose so that the front of the car kind of grips the track and will cut into the corner there. So, yeah, it can work for you for a little bit going down that stretch there, but yeah, when you get to the corner, you don't want to be tucked up behind somebody.
Looking on board here, Ryan Kaprowski. He's the driver in that gray Mercedes with the blue and pink stripes going down the car. Chase back down Jacob Schneider. Jacob was the car that just passed him. He's going to continue, though, to pull away for the time being. Deeper into the pro category, Ethan Bass. He had passed around the outside. Passing Harry Wills around the outside as they go to the first couple corners here.
Boy, this battle, I can't take my eyes off the box with Ryan on it, showing from his in-car there, you know, looking at his hood. Oh, you can just see the yo-yo effect, you know, where he got into the corner a little bit better, but Pierce got out of the corner a whole lot better here. And now Kaprowski is going to have to play offense and defense at the same time. And Austin, I can tell you, and I know you know this, when you've got to do both, it's a pain. It is just a headache. It's frustrating, and it looks like you're going to get a pass here.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's mentally draining as well. Side by side here. Looks like Chase Wilson and Ryan Kaprowski.
That looks like Aaron Murray.
Yeah, Murray there. Sorry.
Alex or Aaron.
Alex Murray.
Which one? Okay.
So Alex Murray going to take away that spot there from Ryan Kaprowski. He did not seem too pleased to be passed by Jacob Schneider. Just about one lap ago in that same area of the track, and I can only imagine he's fuming right now behind the wheel. And John, it's also, from my point of view, sort of mentally taxing as well to be on offense and have to perform some of those defense responsibilities to make sure that, you know, while you're trying to pass the car, you don't get past yourself.
You're right, and while that was going on, James Pierce has moved up in the second here. But yeah, when you're playing offense and defense, and you're trying to get around the guy in front of you, and you know you're faster, there is really nothing more frustrating behind the wheel. Very few things, should I say, more frustrating than you get past while you're trying to do the passing. You know, I know in my mindset, a lot of times I'm like, wow, couldn't you just follow me through? But you know, it happens, and big thing is you got to regain your composure and go back to work at that point, though.
And as much as James Pierce here was sliding his tires around last race, at just about the same time into the race, he looks a lot more cool, calm, and collected. Still kind of making a lot of fierce movements on the wheel, but he's doing a lot better job, I think, in this race to keep those tires cooler a lot earlier on as he continues to try and hunt down this lead here from Taylor Lane. That's that turquoise BMW just up the road as they go into left field.
Yeah, and I can't begin to tell you, too, one of the greatest things to have as a driver is confidence. He just won the previous sprint, so he's got a lot of confidence. He's driven up through the field here, which is going to give him even more confidence. So having all that means, hey, I don't have to push. I can get on this guy's bumper. Maybe I can force him in a mistake or whatever, but you have full confidence that you're going to get around him at some point before the end of the race, and that is a real nice feeling when you're behind the wheel.
As we ride on board right now with Taylor Lane, this is the exact flip side of that battle between two cars. One, the driver that has it, the other, the driver that wants it. You can see just how often Taylor's looking up into his rearview mirror, kind of checking that relative. Right now, though, he's got his eyes pretty much set out the windshield there, and that's exactly what you want to do as a leader. It looks like, though, James Pierce is going to try to shove that car up the inside. It's all going to depend who gets a good drive out of this corner and now down into that next chicane. For right now, it looks like James is going to have it. Taylor's really going to shove the car down to the inside. It's going to flip-flop who has the inside. Look at Taylor trying to go for the crossover.
Yeah, James back out front, and like I said, the big Mo, that he's got to be feeling pretty good and feeling pretty confident. If I didn't know any better, I'd say that in-car just showed him waving goodbye to the people behind him.
Yeah, I think it did. It's going to be hard to prove or disprove it, but boy, as much as he's struggling, it looks like in the cockpit of that car, for right now, he is the driver in the overall lead of the race, and thus in the pro category as well. Harry Wills continues to stay in the thick of things. Sorry, John. Daniel, if we could get a live look here at Harry Wills, he is in the thick of things down right at the bottom of the order in the pro category. He just got around Ethan Bass a couple laps ago. He's trying to get around Kyle Boss.
Yeah, he needs to make some ground up, or he's going to have a really poor points here, and that's going to, really put him behind the 8 ball, moving forward to the next race or two, and that can change the way you race too. If you're trying to make up ground or whatever, you're not taking the risk. Maybe you're not pushing as hard. All those kind of things, and you don't ever want to be in that. You want to always be in the position of playing offense rather than defense.
Well, and again, it just kind of comes down to where you are in the season. I feel like it's not a bad thing to be playing defense in the car, but it's not a good thing to be playing defense when you're basically like 9th or 10th in the running order for the race. You can see Harry goes to the inside just before Maggots and Beckett's steals that spot away there from Kyle Boss. The next car on Harry's radar going to be Dean Timms, just about a half a second off the racetrack. You can see that car just barely blend into and back out of shot before the camera switches now back over to Rich Calais.
Yeah, he's running third in the pro-am here and trying to make up ground on Huson and Scott there in front of him. And this group here, and you touched on this, great call for you earlier. This is a really tight packed group here, and once again, there's not a whole lot of daylight between these guys.
It certainly isn't. You can see next time they're just barely trying to peek to the inside of Rich Calais as they go into that corner now, just trying to set themselves up for this this fast left then right chicane here of Club, and then onto the Hamilton straightaway.
Side by side again, and they make it work and giving each other plenty of room here.
Yeah, you can see, I mean, not a whole lot of room from car to car, but just kind of enough that you need to get the job done, and then some extra bit for the Lord in between you, also known as netcode. These guys, really, it's not just enough to make a clean pass or be right on somebody's door. You do have to leave just a little bit of room there for netcode, the possibility of netcode. These guys are some of the best at it as well. That's why you rarely do you see a whole lot of contact between these drivers.
Yeah, and they are racing really close here. And another nice way to leave just a little bit of room there is, sometimes you can overdrive or someone can get loose. It just gives the people around you an opportunity to, if they have a moment, they can gather the car up and not take anybody out.
Another look here at Dean Timms. He's got the 10th position. Harry Wills just passed him about 1 second ago, obviously. Whoa, one car going sliding. That's Kyle Boss. What a save for him.
Wow.
Good car. That was impressive.
Might have to put him on the Gambler Motorsports dirt team with moves like that. That was quite impressive for these cars. Because usually when you get that sideways, you're gone. It's gone. And I see guys already diving off here to pit road.
Yeah, especially in a GT3 car as well. Like you mentioned, John, a couple of cars coming down onto pit road. This is a live look at Kai Dizel. He's in the third position in that Lamborghini. He's trying to see if he can hunt down Taylor Lane. James Pierce, though, he's checked out for these guys. Already has a 1.7 second lead over Taylor Lane. It was just about, what, a lap and a half ago he made that position. This battle for the Pro-Am, though, again, first to basically like fifth position, pretty much all under one blanket.
Yeah, and this is some good stuff here. I mean, from the driver's standpoint, you're having fun because you're battling, but on the back of your mind, it's like, oh, by this point, you want some free track, just a second to maybe breathe for a minute here, and these guys are getting none of that. So they're probably their only chance to kind of relax is going to be that pit stop that they're going to all be coming into here shortly.
And you kind of know, Jen, as a race car driver, 9 times out of 10, if you're right behind somebody, unless you just got past, you are faster than that guy ahead of you, and you cannot get by them soon enough. As you see Kai Dizel tucked right up underneath that rear ring there of Taylor Lane as they go through Maggots and Beckett's. You see him just kind of a cursory lift off the throttle pedal, just to make sure he has enough room to make all the corners, not too much dirty air on the front end of that race car. But also, when you're that close to somebody, there's a big old blind spot in front of you, and you basically just have to trust them that they're hitting all the apexes and stuff and not sort of leading you astray.
Yeah, exactly, and that is actually where a lot of the mental game of this is here, because you've got to be on them. Number one, if you're faster, you got to try not to run them over. So if all of a sudden they break in a certain corner at the same spot for 3 laps in a row, then all of a sudden they try to do something different, maybe back the corner up or drive deeper, it can catch you off guard. So you have to be paying just complete attention to what's going around you, or you can get yourself in trouble real fast.
But did you see Kyle Smith? He had one hand on the steering wheel the entire way down the straightaway there. I believe that's the Hanger Straight. But I'd also like to touch on the fact that he, and I think that's Andrew Hewson, went side by side through the entirety of Maggots and Beckett's, it looked like, without a single bit of contact between either driver. And I don't think either one of them took a single off track for that entire time.
No, just good racing here, and Kyle is doing a really good job here. And I can tell just by occasionally you see a small grin on his face, everything else, he's having fun in there battling with these guys.
Yeah, it's a good battle between these 3 cars. This is all 3 of these guys fighting for that last podium position up in front of these 2 drivers. You've got Mark Scott and Rick Calais fighting for 1 and 2. Those are the 2 cars you see top of the screen, much further down the road, just barely right there out of the shot on the right-hand side, about 0.3 of a second separating those 2 drivers. Battle for the lead here in the Pro-Am category.
Yeah, and going back a second ago where you said he took his hands off the wheel, that is something, a lot of times guys have a pretty good grip on their wheel, and after a little while, I do it too on straightaway. Even in a dirt car, I'll take my hand off the wheel and stretch my fingers out and put a regrip to reattach myself to the wheel, so to speak. I do it more in road racing than I do anywhere, but yeah, you take the little breaks, and I can tell you, it just feels real good sometimes to stretch those digits out, even if it's just for a second, and then go back to work.
Even some of these cars too, you'll be white knuckling the wheel because there's a lot of steering and counter steering. It's just nice to kind of rest your hand down by the wayside there, as you see Mark Scott making a move, a lunge up the inside, as it were. On Mark Scott, looks like he's going to have the position. Can Mark challenge him back here before they get to the chicane? He's going to have a look. He's going to think about diving down to the inside. He's going to think better of it. They'll better move to just kind of realize, for right now, you've been beat. Rich has the faster car, so he's just Mark. Just going to kind of tuck in behind, see if Rich can pull away. This is a good opportunity, though, if you're not as fast as him on the straight, and it didn't look like he was, to maybe get that draft and just stay even with him for the next couple laps here. Wait for him to burn up his stuff, John.
Yeah, and going back to the grip on the steering wheel, I know a lot of friends and family watch this, and they may not ever get a chance to be on iRacing or to be in these rigs, but the best thing that I can equate that to is if you go back to when you're about 16 years old and you're driving for the very first time, you remember what kind of grip you had on the steering wheel, completely different than what you do now, but you have a real tight grip on there, and that's what these guys will do when they're battling hard. They'll have that grip lap after lap after lap, and it's you don't ever realize it until you let your hand off the wheel and you stretch your fingers and you're like, oh, I've been going at it pretty hard here. But we're back up to third here with Kai Diesel here, and boy, I tell you, those other guys that pitted almost 5 minutes ago, I thought that was a bit early. These guys are starting to stretch much beyond that, so I don't know if the guys are pitting maybe to fix damage or what that strategy would be, but I makes me kind of question why they were coming in there. There has to be a reason. Our leader now is finally pitting.
Yeah, James Pierce bringing his car down onto pit road. I'll have to see how many times these drivers have to come down into the pits. I think it's just the one time, but again, yeah, keep you folks at home appraised on that. The fuel limit is about 60%. Usually on 100, you can go about a full hour. So these guys should have the opportunity to go about 40 minutes or so on a tank of fuel, and maybe anywhere north of 35. So definitely a little bit early to be taking that full set of fuel, the 60%. But who knows? These guys, I'm sure, have practiced a lot, and I feel like for right now, you'd want to get the heaviest load of fuel in the car as soon as possible while the tires are still at their freshest for when you can do that. So I'm kind of liking this strategy call here.
Absolutely. I was thinking about that just a little while ago about the tire strategy. And you go over to run a DRS or whatever, and you, like you said, a full stint is right at an hour. So these tires, you can make it 50 minutes on there. I mean, the tire wear, the big question is how much time could you make up if you do change them? It takes you an extra, I don't know, 13 seconds in the pit area. Can you make that extra 13 minutes up on, or 13 seconds up on the track? That's what guys need to figure out. And I think most of them have come to the conclusion it's just better to take the fuel and go.
Yeah, certainly looking here with James Pierce on number 23. Lamborghini running into 10th position. He's got Ethan Bass just up the road ahead of him, about a half a second between those two cars, and they are considerably far back from Ryan Kaprowski in the 93 car, much further up the road.
Yeah, and the other thing too, and that I'm looking here at James, and he's got traffic, and I was just about to say, when you come back out, there's two things. Number one, he's got to deal with this traffic. Number two, you've added fuel, so the last few laps, the car is going to feel different, when you exit pit than when you came in, just by virtue of the extra fuel load. So you've got to recalculate almost to what you were doing the first part of the race when you did have a full load of fuel in there. So a lot going on for these drivers as they come off of pit road.
Yeah, it feels like, usually a much different car, just balance-wise, compared to where you were before you came down into the pits. Looking here at Andrew Hewson being chased by Nick Stein.
Yeah, and where that really affects the drivers is all of a sudden your braking zone. All of a sudden you were braking at a certain point. Well, if you try braking, that extra weight might cause you to overdrive the corner a little bit. Or go in a little bit deeper, and then once you get into the corner, how much wheel you're actually turning to get through the apex of a corner or something, you have that extra fuel sloshing around in there. Next thing you know, the car might be a little loose, or so there's a lot of different things here. It takes you a lap or two to kind of recalibrate.
James Pierce was the leader in the pro category since he came down pit road to take his full service. He's dropped back to 15th place overall. Since then, Taylor Lane has taken over command in the pro category. This is riding on board with Kai Diesel. The driver chasing down Taylor for the overall lead here in the pro category. Of course, once everything cycles out, this should be for the battle in P2, unless, of course, James runs into a lot of unforeseen traffic. And John, that's basically what you just talked about, is when you do come down pit road, if you do it a lot earlier than everyone else, you might be forced to run around for a lot of laps, a handful, in fact, behind some of the drivers in the slower classes. And the blue flags aren't, by and large, a hard, fast rule that these guys have to follow.
Well, and they're not getting blue flags because they're on the same lap, though, so they're racing for position in their mind, and they have every right to to run as hard as they want at that point. But the thing that's going to be nice for Schneider is he had a bit of a cushion. So, you know, even though he might lose a little bit of ground, I think once this cycles through, he's still going to be back in the up.
Can we get a live look here at the battle between Andrew Hewson and Kai Diesel, because those guys are really going at it right now. They continue to go at it. Another one I've been keeping my eye on is Andrew Hewson and Mark Scott. Nick Stein, excuse me, Nick Stein. He was just forced to go around the outside of him, kind of put two tires in the grass to complete that pass. Those two drivers fighting, the ones I'm talking about in the Pro-Am category. Just up the road from those guys.
Yeah, and those guys are fighting in a hornet's nest too. So
it's tooth and nail, man.
Yeah, it's that adds a bit of difficulty too about where you're going to go, and you got to be a lot more calculating when you've got a crowd around you like that, where you're putting your car, where you're taking the chance. Because again, we touched on this earlier about playing offense and defense simultaneously. You put a tire wrong, and all of a sudden you go from being the hunter to being the huntee, and you're losing spots.
At the 27-minute mark here in the race, we'd like to thank all you folks at home for joining us along live and watching. If you're watching this, of course, after the fact, thank you for your viewership as well. I'd like to take a quick second to thank our sponsors here. I'd like to thank Race Anywhere. They're a major distributor of sim racing products based in the UK, specializing in some of the highest quality sim racing brands such as ProSimu, GSI, OBP, and many more. Highly recommend you folks at home check it out if you're looking to put together a sim rig of your own, or maybe even just upgrade yours. As we continue to look at this battle here, Ethan Bass in the 51 car all over the rear end of the 41 car of Ryan Kaprowski.
They're slipping and sliding. Oh, that's pretty gnarly there. Those guys are really, really racing hard.
Or excuse me, yeah, that's James Pierce. Oh,
Yeah,
one
going
car
backwards.
facing the wrong direction. He's missing his fascia, a Porsche by the looks of it. Looks like he already told maybe we can get a replay of that. Looks like it's Mark Scott.
Oh, and he had a good
It wasn't a
run going,
Porsche.
too.
If I recall, that's a hard lick for him. We'll see if we can't get a replay here. It's kind of hard to pinpoint it once the driver pulls off track with the SDK. You see Jacob Schneider continuing to make his march up through the field, racing side by side at the moment there with Taylor Lane. That's the driver in that turquoise BMW. He's been floating around the podium positions pretty much all day long, and all these drivers right now in the top three started in 9th, 8th, and 10th place respectively.
Yeah, that'd be the cream rising to the top. I think that's where that term would come from. These guys have been solid here all day, and they're proving it once again here. We still have about 20 minutes to go, so, you know, this race by no means is over yet. But I'll tell you, Pierce is looking for a way around here. You saw him go out, flash his lights, saying, "Hey, bud, I want to round you here, and I'm quicker than you." And you know, passing is going to be a little more difficult. You know, the tires are not what they were. I'm sure they're still feeling fairly good for him here, but you can't really push it as hard as what you really want to complete this pass.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, we're just under a half an hour of the way through this 50-minute race, so approaching that 60% mark of race completion. And James Pierce, I've been kind of surprised just how hard a time he's been having trying to make his way further up through the field, especially given the fact, I mean, he's got Ethan Bass ahead and then some Pro-Am cars. You'd think that the difference between them speed-wise would be a lot greater than that, but sometimes you can still have a large difference in speed, and you need just an even larger difference in speed to really have a good opportunity to pass some of the cars you're racing with. It looks like Jacob Schneider, barely got his nose chopped off there by Taylor Lane. Definitely faster right now is Schneider. It's just trying to find a good way around.
And also keep in mind, after 30 minutes of racing here, you've got a lot of clag around the track, a lot of marbles, a lot of stuff. If you get offline, that's going to cost you. Your car's not going to turn as good. It's not going to handle it. It's not going to fire off the corner as good. So all those things are coming into play there. That would contribute, I think, to him. I think he's got a nose in there. He does. And that's all going to contribute to the difficulty of getting back up through the field there.
Certainly is side by side as they now go down the straightaway here, heading into Luffield. Drag race there down the Wellington Straight. So they go through left field before they
Yeah,
head
bit of
into
a game.
Cops.
There's a bit of a game of chicken going down there. Who's got to lift first? And I think they lifted about the same time, but I think Pierce just kind of rolled a little bit longer than what Lane did there.
Yeah, the last of the late breakers, as it were, before they went in there. And so move Jacob Schneider now up into the second position overall. I'd be real interested to see when he finally decides to come down pit road, and when he does, just how far down into the field he falls. And boy, you could really see, Taylor Lane shot that car into Maggots and Beckett's here. I feel like he's got a lot of confidence in the braking power of that BMW.
Yeah, you got to think so. And look at Pierce now trying to break the draft. So, all games being played here still later in the race. We saw it earlier, too, going down that stretch there. But Pierce is, like I said, his confidence is still probably riding high. Just won a race here. And Diesel is in the pits. Or yes, Schneider is back out front here. But Diesel, though, is in the pit lane here.
Yeah, he's brought his Twisted Racing Lamborghini on down to pit road, so this will be a kind of a good indication for us of just how far through the field he's going to fall. He was 6 seconds when he crossed the start-finish line that last time by, so we'll see just how far back he falls compared to the leaders. Further down in the field, you see Kyle Boss. He was racing with our previous leader there, James Pierce. All right, Diesel, just for you folks at home, leaving the pits right now, that's just how long one of these pit stops takes in these cars. Only fuel for him.
Yeah, and I also like getting off pit lane here. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the big wall that you got to navigate around. It feels like you're driving through the city.
Yeah, I always find it interesting how the different circuits have that pit road exit. I think by far the bougiest of them all, if that's the correct word for it, is the one at Abu Dhabi, because you get to go underneath the racetrack, and it's very weird. I like how it flows, but it's also super scary because you really want to push the car, but if you push it a little bit too much, you're going to have an accident. And the absolute worst time to have one is when you're leaving the pit road.
Yeah, and the other one, I think that I'm just in the level of difficult. Oh man, he took a lot of curb there, Derek Miller. Is obviously Monaco. When you come out there, you're basically on turn, and if there's some kind of braking incident or something up there, I mean, there's nothing between you and the cars at speed. So we've seen some hairy things happen there on the exit at Monaco.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. Yeah, because you're just up through the hill there. And if you're side by side with the guy, you only have about a split second of an opportunity to figure out who's going to be the one to lift before you make that harsh left-hander there. And that one is almost flat out in some of these newer F1 racing cars. I say almost flat out, maybe about fifth or sixth gear.
Yeah, still way faster than I'd want to go through there. That's what the point is.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I don't have those kind of guts, those guys are remarkable here. But you know what though? I think these guys are doing a heck of a job here. We've really not seen a whole lot of offs other than the starts of race here. These guys have all navigated a pretty tricky, high speed. There's a lot of places here to get yourself in trouble. These guys have done well with it, which I guess really shouldn't be a surprise, but now you're starting to see a lot of the Pro-Am. This would be something, and Austin, maybe you can enlighten me on this one, but all the pro guys seem to have pitted before the Pro-Am. The Pro-Am guys are pitting a little bit later. Why do you think that is? Because, I mean, they're running the same car.
Yeah, that's a great question, John. And you touch on that, and it looks like now all the guys, even in the Pro-Am category, have pit too. But by and large, a lot of the pro guys are starting to pit before the Pro-Am drivers. And I don't know if that's just them trying to maximize the fact that their tires will be better overall for the race when they put more of that fuel load in the car. It also just is a really good opportunity to kind of offset yourself strategy-wise and where you are on track from some of your competitors. If you have a good opportunity to pit your car and get out on track in clean air, you can sometimes gain seconds on the drivers you're racing, even though you did come down pit road and take fuel only. So now by and large, your car might be a little bit slower with all that extra weight on board. It might drive a little bit worse with all that extra weight on board because the cars do handle vastly different. Other than that, though, maybe just driver preference.
Yeah, just interesting different strategies when these guys are all largely in the same cars, but probably good though for the drivers, because one thing you really don't want to do is come down a congested pit road. It becomes hard to find your pit box and where to pull in and all that kind of stuff. The mistakes are a lot easier when pit road is congested, that's for sure.
Well, it's also a lot easier to enter pit road at speed when you're by yourself too, because then you get to see all the braking markers that you use, because it's not just one braking marker. Everybody has their own. Everybody has their own comfort limit with how much they're willing to push, because you're coming off of, that last corner before the entrance to pit road. I'm going to say the better part of about 140 mile an hour, and you have to get this car stopped at about maybe 45 mile an hour for pit road speed. And it's a lot of opportunities to get that car kind of squarely a little bit sideways before you hit that pit road speed limiter. And of course, you have to slow the car down and then almost immediately jerk the car over to the right to make pit road. Riding on board right here with James Pierce, 7th position. He was the car leading the race before he came down onto pit road. Kai Diesel right now is your overall leader. We just talked about him, or excuse me. Yeah, he is the leading the race. Once again.
Yeah, I think him getting put out in traffic, I'm talking about James Pierce here, I think this has kind of affected his race significantly, actually. It doesn't appear that he's coming back through, because remember, where did he start, like 6th or whatever for the
thing? He started it in 10th. No, 5th. Started 5th with James Pierce.
Yeah, and he was already up front and dictating the pace by about 5 or 6 minutes into the race here. And obviously they're a little more spread out now, but I don't think he is cutting through the field like what he once was here. And then Diesel now has got the race lead here, and he's got about a 4-second advantage, it looks like. Just over 4 seconds. Right.
The battle you're looking at on your screen is Sheas Fentikaraju. He's got about a 0.3 of a second lead there over Mark Sigelkow. Mark trying to recover from that earlier spin he had in the first opening couple laps there of the race. The driver, the number 34 Porsche, trying to hunt down that pretty okay-ish motorsports driver of Sheas for that 9th position. Into the M category, we have a battle for the last spot on the podium. Eric Papineau all over the rear end now of Rick Swan, as you can see those cars making their way through the chicane. This is an onboard look here at Rick Swan. This is live. One of our drivers again carrying those onboard cameras.
Now that seat looks comfortable.
That's one of those ones, if you were ever in a rain delay on iRacing, maybe a red flag, that'd be something I could see myself falling asleep in very easily.
Absolutely. I've done that in the real world a few times, and a few times I've actually fallen asleep in the make ready chute, ready to go out for heat races and that. It's amazing, the seats, how far they've come in not only here, because even the one that I'm sitting in is really, really comfortable. I remember when I first started driving, I mean, it was uncomfortable. It really wasn't that safe because your head would still bounce around, and now you're just cocooned in. I mean, the seats are just absolutely amazing, and I can't believe the seats that people have in their rigs now are better than the seats that I had probably when I first started driving, and and that's great. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I can tell you for a fact I have fallen asleep in between races in our Saturday League, the Bootleg Racing League, also driving in the endurance races with Western PA, sometimes when my stint is like 2 minutes to go before I hop in the race car. Sometimes it's 2 hours in between stints. You just kind of get a little bit sleepy there waiting for your turn behind the wheel of the race car. You're not off a little bit.
Yeah, and that makes a big difference too, though. I know some guys here can sit at a desk and have their wheels clamped to the desk. Some guys are in full sim rigs. Some guys are on single monitors. Some guys are on triples. Some guys are on curved. Some guys are in virtual reality. It is amazing how this offers everybody with a different budget something fun, and you can be competitive with a single. I know guys with single monitors that are just as fast as everybody. Oh, wow. Ethan Bass gets into the
Little more
back of Murray
contact.
there.
Alex Murray goes around too.
Yeah, it looked like Bass got into the back of him.
I'll have to see if we can get a replay of that from a different angle. I'd also like to see if we can't ride on board with that other driver. I think that was Mark Scott running the lake, but shout out to that wood paneling in his basement. I know a lot of people don't like it. It's not fit for base. I personally am a big fan of wood paneling. I grew up with it in my basement at home. Love it. Love to see it. It does not deserve the hate. Yes, Andrew Houston, it looks like. My man is really doing it in his basement down there, the wood paneling around him. Shout out to him. Andrew, don't upgrade your basement. It looks perfect as it is.
Yeah, and I like the wheel hung up on behind him there. And some of these guys, like I said, going back to the equipment, I know a lot of people will see these curved mirrors or people in VR with racing gloves or different getups here. But this is a neat thing for anybody out there that is watching this, thinking about maybe joining iRacing. You can come and do this at any budget and be competitive. You can, go get yourself $100 wheel and off you can go. Wheel and pedals and off you can go. That's really all you need, depending on how involved you get. I remember when I first started, $200 is what my whole setup was, and I'm not even going to get into the numbers now, but let's just say that several $1,000s later is worth of upgrades. That it can be addicting. So I'd put that warning out there. If you get in, you might get addicted and spend more money than what you think.
Yeah, it's sort of a space race because when you start upgrading
Yes.
one part of the rig, you want to upgrade another part of the rig. I started with a $100 Thrustmaster Ferrari wheel playing Forza Motorsport on Xbox, and then I got a Logitech 920 for the PC, and that's when I started my iRacing. And since then, you just start upgrading stuff, and your friends talk you into it. I got peer pressured from our buddy Chris Wolfson. He forced me to buy the trigger on an upgrade, and I can't say I blame him for it because it's one of the best decisions I ever did in terms of racing equipment. And it didn't make me a whole lot faster, but it certainly is more comfortable and a lot more consistent with just the feel of what's going on behind the wheel of a race car. And when you can be consistent and the car starts to behave how you want it to or how you think it will, that's what's going to get you a couple tenths out there on the racetrack.
You'll get faster the more consistent. And I tell guys all the time, you don't have to try to push. Sometimes just be careful and consistent. We're looking at a replay now where Ethan Bass got in the back of Murray there. Looked like he just kind of rolled the center of the corner a little bit better. Really tough to tell there. A lot of things could have gone on there. Murray might have had to lift a little bit, maybe to keep his car pinned down to the apex there. But nonetheless, it ended with Murray facing the wrong direction there. And with about 7 minutes to play, and when that happened, there was about 10 minutes to play. Not a lot of time to make that ground up.
And that area of the track, Brooklands and Luffield is one of those corners you're going to have a lot of different agendas for the drivers. Some guys want to go in there and kind of short track it, where you just go ahead and just rim ride on the bottom. All the way around there, you just hit the apex. Some guys want to go in and you diamond the corner. When I say that, imagine exactly like a diamond shape straight in. Really try to arc the car to harsh right in the center of the corner and then straight line out. That's that diamond. Kind of looks like a triangle, whereas a lot of guys, they might go in wide and then try to exit low. So a lot of different agendas through there. And if you're going to go in one way and the guy ahead of you decides to diamond the corner and he's going to brake check you hard in the center, you might make some contact with him in the center of the corner and get that car really upset. And even though you don't intend to, you got a bunch of guys pushing it just as hard as each other, taking different lines with differing agendas there.
Yeah, and those different agendas can really throw you. And that goes back to that concentration. We're 44 minutes into the race, 40 minutes into the race. If you've been pushing and had to be up on the wheel, so to speak, and had somebody in front of you the whole race, that mental exhaustion can without a doubt come in. You might be not quite as smooth as what you were. Remember, we're 45 minutes into this race. They just got done racing too for 25. So they've been behind the wheel now for a while. They also had that practice session, beforehand and then between the races. So these guys have been out there for a long time turning laps. And I think fatigue I think it's a real thing here in iRacing. And that's where mistakes can get made.
Yeah, it definitely is. As you see, Shreyas Venkataraju just tucked in behind here. Mark Sigelkow, good recovery here for Mark. Shreyas obviously losing out that 9th position, though still very securely inside the top 10. I'd like to thank another one of our sponsors, Go for the Gap. It's an up-and-coming motorsport graphic design and artwork store run by creator Cami Sturch on Etsy. Seriously, highly recommend you guys go check her out. She has a lot of different options for prints for walls, stickers, lots of cool stuff to be had in there. You got some extra free wall space in your house. Definitely highly recommend you go check out Go for the Gap. Up in the front end of the field, leading the pro category is still Kai Dalziel. He's got Jacob Schneider just in behind. Schneider has about a little under 5 minutes to go to catch up to about 2.5 seconds there to Kai. Rounding out the podium there for right now, Harry Wills doing a really good job. It says he started in the 2nd position. He did not. He started from the pits very much. Oh, he's got to go for a slide just as I'm saying that before he crosses the start-finish line this time by. Seems that Mercedes, but just lost a heap of time there. So we look at Dean Timms trying to chase down Chris Long here for the 6th position in his BMW.
Boy, this race has been really unpredictable, where guys have just had little minor, offs and whatnot, shaking up the running order. That invert, I think, is a big part of that for sure. It really has made things a lot more difficult for the higher end drivers, but some of them have risen to the occasion, and I think some of them, I just think pit strategy, might have gotten the best of them here.
Well, Jacob Schneider has gained more than a half a second on leader Kai Dalziel in this last lap. He's gained about a whole second. Right now you can see side-by-side battle going on between Andrew Hewson and Mark Sigelkow. Andrew currently has the 8th position. Mark wants it. Looking at a dive there before they go into the final chicane there. Club?
Yeah, that's actually a 3-car battle there. So a lot to be determined here in the last couple minutes.
This is a live look on board with Andrew Hewson. Goes into the first couple corners there before he gets down to Village.
Look at him. He's not even blinking. That's such a high level of concentration. Oh,
Contact made with Hewson. A little bit more contact there from Shreyas Venkataraju for good measure there. Well, Andrew Hewson lost 2 spots there in one corner. He's going to be seeing red here for the next couple laps down before the end of this race. Might even have some damage on the rear end of that BMW.
But the expression on his face never changed. This is why I would never have an onboard when I race, because you'd get the salute that usually comes with it, and I mean, I get way more animated
The
than
number
that.
1 salute, by the way,
Yep,
not talking about military style.
That's right, and man, that is just being as cool as a cucumber. But we are on the final lap here, and Dalziel has got a bit of a lead, but it's been coming down. But I think Schneider is going to run out of time here.
Yeah, and just before I was going to ask Daniel if we could take a look at this battle for the overall lead here, he's already got it for us. Kai Dalziel has the position. Jacob Schneider wants to go back-to-back today and sweep the races. He's got about a little bit over a half a lap to do it and a little bit over 1 second of ground to make up. It should be really close. I think if he's going to get it done, it's going to be just before the start-finish line if Jacob can get there. But the second half of the track, I think this is where Kai's been the strongest so far.
Yeah, that time keeps coming down, but I think when he came out in traffic, that I think is going to be the difference here.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there, John. I think it's just that time of coming out off of pit road in traffic, and just those little bits of time that you lose having to run behind those other cars and set them up for passes. He's got them right in his sights though as they continue to go down this hanger straight here. Just a couple more corners to go. Just about 1 second flat of a lead. I think it's going to be a little bit too little, a little bit too late here for Jacob Schneider. Unfortunately for him, he had the fastest car in the pro category, probably the fastest car in the entire race. He's just going to come up a little bit short here for the checkered flag because they're going to come out of the club area of the racetrack. Taking a little bit of curb there for good measure is Jacob Snyder, but looks like Kai Dizel is going to cross the start-finish line here and take his first checkered flag of the season in the pro category.
Yeah, well done there for Kai. And we're going to go back here to the battle for Ethan Bass here. This is fourth.
Just at the
Wow.
line, a little bit. Oh, hard contact in the inside wall goes James Pierce.
That would be leaving nothing on the table there for that one. So now we're
Yeah,
going to go down to the
that's-
Pro-Am leader, and that's Rich Calais. And I think
he was lagging out
got
there.
it.
Even on my screen, I couldn't quite see him.
Yeah.
He's just finally popped back into existence, and as soon as I say that, goes back out of it. He's going to cross the start-finish line, though, so he will get to keep the win. It's the worst feeling in the world when you get it stripped away from you like that. Nick Stein going to cross the line in the second position.
Yeah, nobody likes to lose their packets on the last lap.
Yeah, that's one of the worst feelings as a driver. You can hear it, Aaron Beaver. He's the AM driver. Oh, Mark Blake Scott, excuse me, going for a little bit of a slide. Aaron Beaver still just under a half a lap to go, and it looks like Blake's going to be well and truly out of the way there for Blake before he continues to complete the final couple laps here for Aaron Beaver, excuse me.
Yeah, solid run. He's been up front, I think, almost the whole race here. So he got the lead and controlled it. And he's had a really nice night in general here, too, tonight.
Yeah, doing a really good, quite consistent job for him as well. After being the bridesmaid in Daytona for the AM category, he's going to take the checkered flag here in Silverstone.
Yeah, always a big deal to take a checkered flag here, like I said, with all the history and everything we had here before. So good win for all our division winners here tonight.
Yeah, really solid, consistent run for him and Matthew Plaisance. Going to go ahead and just kind of trade finishing positions there with Aaron. He won in Daytona. He's going to come up one spot short here today at Silverstone. And I believe we can get the final finishing results for the viewers at home, right, Daniel? All right, we're going to pull those up for you. Kai Dizel going to go ahead and take the checkered flag there in the pro category. Jacob Schneider going to come home one spot short in the second position by just 0.7 of a second. Really did he have quite the charge there towards the end of the race. Harry Wills is going to round out the podium. Good recovery from Harry after starting on the pit road. Ethan Bass in fourth. James Pierce is going to round out the top five. Unfortunately for him, that pit strategy played not quite paying off for him. Chris Long going to come home in sixth, followed by Dean Timms in seventh. Chase Wilson in eighth with Alex Murray in ninth. Kyle Boss 10th. Jay Shallington in 11th. Ryan Kaprowski 12th. Jeremy Littleton and Taylor Lane round out the 14-car field. And in the Pro-Am category, Rich Calais going to take the checkered flag over Nick Stein. Christopher Johnson rounds out the podium spots. Kyle Smith fourth. Derek Miller rounds out the top five. Blake Scott sixth. Justin Rousseau in seventh. Mark Silicow in eighth. Good recovery there for Mark Andrew Hewson, able to battle back from that late race spin to take the ninth spot away, from Shreyas Vendikaraju, who finishes in 10th. Mark Scott's going to come home in 11th, followed by Braden Mailing in 12th. Not quite the race Braden would have wanted. Had to pull that car over to the side of the racetrack on lap 1. In the AM category, Aaron Beaver trades spots with Matthew Plaisance to come home in the first position. Matthew coming home in second. Eric Papineau going to round out the podium with Rick Swan fourth, Greg Brockway fifth, John Casey in sixth. Before we go ahead and talk to our racers here before the end of the night, I'd like to thank another one of our sponsors here, IMB Racewear. They're a fantastic company. They offer a huge range of bespoke, no limits, fully customizable race and team wear. For a full lineup of their product range, you can go ahead and check out their website. That link will be below in the description of the video. And John, let's see who all we have to interview here. Looks like, yeah, Kai Dizel. Hey, Kai, huge victory here at Silverstone for you. Doing a great job to, I believe, break into the podium. Yeah, your first podium of the season, second race in here, and it looked like before the end there, Jacob was really piling the pressure on those last couple laps.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd just like to thank Twisted for having me on for their second year. First year was good with them, and I decided to come back in the Lamborghini for the second, and we just picked up our first win, so it means that we can win. So I'm hoping we can win some more. But yeah, the last couple of laps was very intense. Not only did I have him about 2 seconds behind me, or I had I almost had a drive-through penalty. I was really pushing it, trying to keep it clean for the last couple of laps, and it got to the point where the last 5 laps I was driving with a 24x, so one more, and I would have had a drive-through penalty. So it was very pressuring not to make those mistakes in the corners that I usually made mistakes in, but also keep enough of a distance where he wasn't gonna get me or be able to dive bomb me. Because if he did dive me, I'm probably gonna have to try to contest that pretty hard, and then I'd probably have another penalty from that.
Yeah, certainly if he opens up the wheel in any of those situations, depending on how many X's he has left before the end of the race, that would be a drive-through penalty for you. You come out of here, like you mentioned, with the race victory, and now you know that you can win. Usually you kind of get that monkey off your back and it opens the floodgates. This has got to be some pretty awesome momentum for you going into the rest of the season, especially the way with which you won it. I mean, you started 9th on the grid.
Yeah, it was after we had the reverse grid. I had to start. I don't know where I started, 9th from wherever I started, but yeah, it was very intense. At the first couple of laps, we were all like nose to tail, and we were checking up in some corners, trying to find each other's like spacings. But thank God I got the better of traffic, and I just took advantage of what I could. Very hard into the braking zones, very hard into pit lane, and we made some ground. I think he was like a second behind me going into the pit lane, and I pulled a 4-second gap after it, so I'm pretty happy with that. But yeah, he's very, very good, and I think that was probably one of the best race I've driven so far this year. But it just shows that even when you drive your best race, you got to be on your toes, because he's going to be there.
Yeah, certainly. Kai, last question, a quick one. How do you pronounce your last name?
But it's funny enough, my dad told me to tell you guys that, because nobody really knows my last name. My last name is pronounced DL. It's Scottish, like in Ryan DL.
DL. Awesome. Well, I'm glad I asked. Thank you for letting us know. We'll go ahead and make sure we say DL for the rest of the season. Kai, one more thing, though. Before you go, who do you have to thank for your win tonight?
Like I'd like to say, I would just like to say thank you to everybody under the Twisted team. And also, I would like to say thank you to James A. Pierce for giving me the setup. I had to make a couple of tweaks, but we made it work. Yeah, my mom and dad, hello. And yeah, it was, I think that's everything that I went through.
Oh, man, not even an I love you for your mom. That's kind of harsh.
I'll say that when I get up there.
I got you, buddy. No problem. Congratulations on the win, man. That was a huge job, especially to hold off Jake there towards the end of the race. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Yeah, that was Kai DL bringing home the checkered flag here in the pro category. John, I think you've had the pleasure to catch up with another driver. How about Ethan Bass there?
Yeah, I've caught up with Ethan. Ethan, this is John up in the booth. You got a copy?
Yep, hello.
Hi. Well, I tell you, you almost got to the podium here tonight. Bring her home in 4th. A solid effort. Walk me through your race here. Did you have any moments where it kind of unnerved you a little bit, or was it a pretty clean race from your standpoint?
I just got unlucky on lap 1 into a checkup before the old pit straight. I think I just tagged the back end of a Lambo, and it just, I don't know why, the car spun. So I was like last of the pro field on lap 1, bar Harry, who started from pit lane. So that was an interesting, yeah, that led to an interesting race.
Well, that's a great recovery to be able to come back from that and get up back through the field. What did you do? Anything specific? Were you just pushing, or the pit strategy? What do you think helped you climb back up through the field like that?
Oh, it was definitely the pit strategy. We were all on a battling train thing in the opening 5 laps, and I immediately knew, like, as soon as I'm able to get to pit lane, short field, and just then go and just drive my pace on clean air, I was a lot faster than anyone in the train was. And if you're in the train, you're always checking up for people, and it's always just a case of you're never doing your optimal lap times. The amount of people I jumped in pit lane like I was amazed to get out of the front of Alex Murray right through turn 2. It was really cutting it close, but it ended up working out in the end. Did get a tire warning on the penultimate lap, so I was pretty close to not maybe making it.
Did you look and see what how much tire you had left?
In the fronts, it was down to the 30s.
Wow. Well, nice
Yeah,
job hanging
awesome.
on there, and that's what I call dodging a bullet. But very well done here, and great drive back up through the field. Great strategy there. You're going to have to give your race strategist maybe a little bit of a raise there for that. But I tell you, fourth, not bad. We'll get you up on the podium here before too long, I'm sure. But who would you like to give a shout out to for your run here tonight?
It's always a good thanks to the boys on Hypertune, Demon Tweaks, Fight Color Cancer, and the boys at Orbit Motorsport who let me rock this old boy.
All right, Ethan. Well, congratulations again on a great run here tonight. Hopefully we'll talk to you again before too long. That's Ethan Bass, our fourth place finisher in the Pro Division here tonight.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and take a minute to talk to Rick Calais, winner in the Pro-Am category. Rick, you had a really strong run out there, won the race by just about 6 or so seconds. First off, talk me through the race, and we'll get into more specifics of it.
Started 8th, I believe. Kept it clean. There was a bunch of stuff going on ahead of me, so my goal was to just keep it clean. I knew from the first race I had some pace. Just trying to keep clean to be able to move forward.
Well, Rich, you talked about knowing you had some pace in the first race. Again, that 25-minute sprint sort of. Did you have to make any changes, or did you just kind of realize you had pace in that first one and just like, you know what, I'll put the thing on jack stands, I'm not touching it?
Yeah, basically kept the car exactly the same. Practice throughout the week. This is not my best track by any means. To be honest, first time I ran it in a GT3 car was Sunday night. But I had some help from my good buddy Chase Wilson. Helped me see the lines. Did a lot of practice. But came out of the first race, knew I had pace, so just kept everything the same.
Last question here for you, Rich. Who do you want to thank for your run tonight? And also, very, I'm going to say flashy on the colors. Is there some rhyme or reason behind those two being put on the car?
Well, first off, I'd like to thank all the boys watching. I got a lot of support behind me, and obviously Chase Wilson for just kind of showing me the ropes. He was the guy who got me into iRacing 2-3 years ago at this point. As far as the colors go, I'm a big dude. I kind of stick out like a sore thumb. So why not make my car stick out like a sore thumb?
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and sharing that with us as well. Congratulations on the win, buddy.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
That was Rich Calais, winner in the Pro-Am category. And now I think, John, you've caught up with Christopher Johnson.
I have. Christopher Johnson, you have a copy. I can
do have a copy.
Yeah, I got you. Well, you get a third place here on the podium for the Pro-Am division. Talk to me about your race a little bit, from the highs into the lows.
Started P3. What was that? I think T3 or 4 spun out, ended up in last, and it was just a long grind pretty much back to where I started. I just couldn't catch up to the other two in front. Been a rough night for me.
Well, but it's a good recovery when you can come home on the podium here. So, not all is lost here tonight. But what about this track was giving you troubles? I mean, I know there's a lot of high-speed turns and stuff like that and a lot of braking here. So what for you is a big challenge here for you?
To be honest with you, this is probably one of my best tracks. I've only been sim racing since like October. So it's all fairly new to me as far as that goes. But this is probably one of my best tracks, and to be honest with you, I felt like it was my track to win, and I a little bit more pressure than I probably should have. Tried to fit in some gaps that were there originally that closed up on me, and kind of messed me up in that aspect. But I felt like I had the pace to probably end up on top for this particular one.
Well, Chris, I will tell you this. That has happened to all of us where you're at a track that you kind of feel real comfortable with and you feel like you can get away with doing some things. And I've been there many, many times. So, and I'm sure that I hate to say this, but you'll probably find yourself in that position at some other point down the road too. So I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Oh, no, not at all. I was about to say, I got some good teammates that coach me through pretty much anytime I stress myself out when it comes to messing up around track and things of that nature, and they actually help me out, making sure I can at least bring a podium.
Well, you did bring home a podium, and I congratulate you for that. And speaking of your teammates, who would you like to give a shout out to here for your podium here tonight?
Chris Thacker. He's racing in the UK League right now, and my boy Ultimatum, Eclipse Racing Team.
Well, awesome, man. I hope we get a chance to talk to you again. Congratulations on a podium here, and just put it behind you, and I'm sure you'll come out strong at the next race.
Definitely appreciate it. You guys have a good one.
Yep. Take care, Chris. It's Christopher Johnson, our third place finisher in the Pro-Am division here in Austin. Fun night here, man. I think that's going to about do it for us.
Yeah, it really was a phenomenal race, and I'm really glad that we chose this race to be the second one on the calendar. I feel like there's a lot of differences in the track layout, especially compared to Daytona. I feel like this place is more akin to maybe what we saw in Barcelona, where you did have a couple long straights here, but there's also those, more open flowing corners, especially with these guys. And again, like you touched on it earlier, John, you have the opportunity to either trim the car out or make it more downforce oriented.
Yeah, and that's always a delicate balance because these cars, I can't begin to tell you how difficult these cars, and you can make that slight adjustment and go from being like what you would feel like is right on the edge of being just, solid to all of a sudden being out left field. Because when you do take that, some of that downforce and all that away, it does change the balance. And it just that's why we love racing. I mean, it's difficult and make you bang your head against your steering wheel 9 times out of 10, but it's that 1 out of 10 where you can taste victory makes it all worth it.
Exactly. Yeah, couldn't have explained it better myself. But at that point, that's going to wrap up the show for us. On behalf of myself, Austin Belke, my co-host John Hine, and of course Daniel Costello, our amazing director and cameraman, and everyone else behind the scenes here. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.